Welcome to the Donor Project podcast, where infertility doesn't mean childless. I'm Dr. Miranda Miles, the contemporary conceptionist, and I help women and men using donor eggs bring their baby home sooner. This is what happens when a women's health expert chooses to use donor eggs to create her unique family. Think about the Donor Project podcast as your go-to place for everything you need to know about using donor eggs to bridge the gap between you and your baby. Because every woman deserves the opportunity to be a mum and every man a dad. Welcome to episode 5 of the Donor Project podcast. I am so rapt to have with me today the beautiful Joanna Tan, who many of you would probably know much more as Joanna from IVF Tribe on Instagram. Joanna is a fabulous physiotherapist with a passion for helping people get to be their most healthiest versions of themselves and to take control of their bodies. She absolutely loves the outdoors and started a hashtag #lookup movement on Instagram, which many of you will know about and will be following. So welcome, lovely Joanna. Thank you for joining me today from your hospital room in quarantine in Malaysia. Tell me what's going on, Jo.
Thank you for having me, Miranda. Yes, I will share the funny story that happened before this. I came on at 11 o'clock with my hair wet, just getting out the shower, and Miranda goes, "Oh, we're recording this." So I'm like, hang on, let me dry my hair, let me put a face on, let me actually put a top on. So here we are, half an hour later.
Beautiful. You look beautiful. Day 7, hotel quarantine.
Well, this is the first time I have a face because, I've just been getting in the shower, having a wet hair, putting on active wear, and not giving a shit of how I look like.
Absolutely. So why would you?
I feel human now, thanks to you.
You look gorgeous.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here. It's so beautiful to have you, and to your willingness always to share your story on Instagram has helped so many women through your IVF journey. Just share, Jo, with people now where you are at. Where are you at with your journey?
We are now, Nick and I are now in hospital quarantine in Malaysia because we've chosen to go down the donor path after a very, very long 2 years of IVF treatments with my own eggs. We decided to go down the donor path. So we are now in quarantine in Malaysia, and hopefully we'll get out in 7 days and we will pursue our donor fertility cycle.
And how are you feeling about it?
Nervous now. Yeah, nervous.
Is that because of your journey? You feel nervous?
Yeah, a little bit of PTSD. What if it doesn't work? We've sacrificed so much to get here. It wasn't easy to get over here. And I've heard stories of, people not getting success the first go in the donor cycle. So I have that all in the back of my mind. And it is, I'm just, a little bit nervous, scared. Well, not a little bit, a lot nervous.
It's a process, Jo. I remember the first time when I did mine with Charlie, when I had Charlie and we were going to Thailand. And I remember making the decision to use donor eggs and thinking, fantastic, I'm finally going to be a mum. And there was a huge sense of relief around that. And in my heart, I think I knew it was going to work, right? But there was, your head gets in the way and you start looking at the statistics, and, it can still take 3 rounds of donor egg IVF before you get a successful outcome, because they're still playing around with the drugs and doing all sorts of, tweaking of things to make it right. So it can still be a really nerve-wracking process, and particularly on the back of your history as well. So just so people know, share with people the back history before you made the decision to use donor eggs.
We did 10 rounds of IVF with my own eggs. And I think similar like you, I got, 10 rounds, I collected 145 eggs. So for my age at 45 or 43, 44 at the time, it's a lot of eggs for my age.
Amazing.
Unfortunately, it was the quality. we did all the tests, but in my heart of hearts, I knew it was an equality issue. I mean, you get slapped with the unexplained infertility, which is really a shit diagnosis. It's not a diagnosis.
It's not a diagnosis.
It's not a diagnosis whatsoever. But yeah, in my heart of hearts, I knew I was, 44, really in the thick of things. It was my quality. So we got the eggs, we got the embryos, but we always sort of left with, one to transfer, none to freeze. So I had to keep going, cycle after cycle after cycle, which put a toll on my body, on finances, on my relationship with Nick, everything. So I did 7 back-to-back cycles when I first started. So that was hard. That was hard.
Wow. I did 3 back to back and was a bit of a basket case.
yeah. I didn't know left from right, from up to down. And yeah, it was just, I don't know, it was just horrendous. And yeah, a blur right now to look back onto. And
you started that in 2019, I think. Is that right? Yeah. So those 10 rounds from 2019. Yeah, that's a lot of drugs and a lot of medications to be going through. And we all know, of course, you did actually conceive. You did have a successful conception and pregnancy with, unfortunately, an early loss, which is just, so much love and so much grief, so much love for you and so much grief. Was that the turning point for you where you just went, I can't keep doing this?
The loss was horrific, and anyone would understand that. And I go into, I went into like what's next. It's almost I didn't have time to really process, although I was seeing a psychologist and he's great. I almost went into what can we do next? And my specialist, Lynn Burmeister, she was happy for me to do another round. She gave me all, the statistics. She knew, what, not the risk, but, what the outcomes would be. But I think for me, I needed to do one more round just to close the book. If we got nothing, we got nothing. But for me, I needed to do another round, and I was adamant about it. And Nick, I guess he just followed along and let me do what I wanted to do.
They tend to do that when it gets to this point. They just tend to go, whatever you want to do, we'll do it. Yeah.
But in that time of like sort of waiting for my period to come, I sort of went back. When I did a lot of research on donor even before I fell pregnant. So before COVID hit, before the first Melbourne lockdown, I was sort of researching that, and that was very hard for me. I couldn't deal with it. I think I did a month of research on Facebook forums, on internet, and I felt like my life was sucked out of me. I was so depressed. I didn't want to, every time I opened anything about donor embryos, I just the life was sucked out of me. I didn't want to read about it. I had to read about it, but I didn't want to read about it. So I had done a lot of research. I had that all there.
Yeah.
So I reopened that book, sort of that, that file of mine after I lost our baby, and did more research, contacted, clinics around the world. And I basically, it was almost a time thing. I just thought, oh my God, I can actually, go down this path. Travel isn't impossible. I can actually get pregnant this year. So then I thought, if I do another cycle, we'll do this, blah, 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 it would just prolong the donor pathway.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, if I could fall pregnant this year, that's it. So let's go down that path. I was happy to let my genetics go at that point. When I knew that, this could really happen, despite COVID, despite the travel, despite the challenges that, quarantine represented, that it could happen. So that sort of flipped the coin for me a little bit.
So it's certainly not an easy decision or an easy process. And it can take so much time and so much courage to be able to go, you know what, I'm just so at that point where I just want to be a mum, that the genetics starts not to matter so much anymore. That's not to say that it's easy. It's not easy to let go of your genetics and to go, okay, my genes are going to die with me, basically. It's there is a process you need to go through to get to that point, I think, and to really appreciate that. But it's also that understanding, you know, we've all seen the quotes from Oprah Winfrey saying that, you know, DNA doesn't make a family. It's love that makes a family, not DNA. We've all seen that when we're working in this space. And that gives such comfort, because it's not about DNA. It's about so many other things. It is, you know, your donor conceived child is your blood, it's your energy, it's your vitality, it's everything that you are, just not, you know, a little bit of DNA.
Until you reach that point, I think it's very hard for a lot of women, because I do get messages every day, you know, my partner's going through what you're going through, you know, we're trying to reconcile the fact we need donor. How did you and Nick, you know, come to this point? I'm like, I can't tell you how I came to this point. You have to do it yourself.
That's
like,
right.
You know,
that's right. You do
it's your own
point yourself.
It's your own journey. And yeah, look, you know, in my darkest of nights, you know, I still do think, you know, what if, you know, I see a little me, or I see a little, I see myself in my child, and I do mourn that still, but I look at the bigger picture. So, you know, yeah, my darkest of nights, I do still grieve and mourn, and I don't think they will ever go away at all. But yeah, there's a bigger picture.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting thing to sort of explore, Jo, because I have 2 children of my own, and Charlie's 6, and he was from one particular egg donor, and then Matilda's 2, almost 3, and she's from a different egg donor. And it's amazing the number of people who will say, you know, your children look like you, who don't know my story. And that's always really quite...
I think I've got the comeback now. If I ever get asked that, you know, who they look like themselves. They look like who they're supposed to look like.
They're supposed to. Oh, I love that. Oh my God.
Because I know I will get it. I know I will get it from strangers, and it will like... But that's my comeback.
I love it. Because I grieved all of that DNA as well. And then I look at my 17-year-old niece, who, particularly when she was in her early teens, 12, 13, 14, she's the spitting image of me. And when I saw that, I knew in my heart of hearts that, you know, my 2 children will never look that much like me as my niece does. But that is such a beautiful thing, that they look like who they're supposed to look like. It's gorgeous, who they're meant to be. And yeah, I love that. It's a beautiful thing to say. So tell me, Jo, why did you go Malaysia? Let's flesh that one.
I searched the world. I searched the whole world. If I could go to South Africa or Greece, which is, I have to say, so much cheaper, I would. But they don't have the particular characteristics and features in a donor that I particularly want.
Yes.
And, you know, for many women, it may not matter to them, but for me personally, to be able to move on to this, you know, this path, I needed a donor that looked like me. Nick is obviously Italian, Greek, and, you know, sort of Caucasian. So if I popped out a white baby, it's just gonna create issues, really. Unnecessary questions. So
it will cut the questions down quite substantially.
Yeah. And so if I can cut that out, 50% gone, yes.
Yes, but even that in itself, you know, to try to get a particular characteristic and features that you required in Australia was impossible. Yeah, impossible.
I did. To find a donor. Yes. I'm on all the forums, the international donor forums, donor egg donor forums, and it's very limited. There's very limited Asian donors and Asian donors of my heritage, and also, you know, donors that a particular age that I was looking for. So it was very restrictive.
Very much so. And then, you know, how do you feel about the anonymous versus known sort of process? Does it bother you either way?
It doesn't bother me either way, but I would have preferred more information. Unfortunately, the clinics here don't provide as much as donor agencies in South Africa. I've had profiles from South Africa and donor agencies, and it's pages of information, quite substantial information.
Yes.
And I don't have that here. I've reconciled. I've just spoke to my nurse, who I've had a beautiful relationship with, and I actually showed her. I took out the photo and the name of the donor, or the number of the donor, and I showed her what other clinics do provide, and she was quite shocked at the amount of information that is sort of out there, and she's actually in the process of changing the questionnaire for their clinic to provide more information.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so she re-interviewed my donor, and she got me a little bit more information. Not a lot, but a little bit more, that I sort of felt, okay, I made the right decision. Yeah,
that's good. That's good. And then I also do wonder, as DNA gets or DNA testing and genetic testing gets even more refined, whether there'll be processes where it becomes a little bit easier to find your anonymous donor if your child wanted to.
I'm not so worried about. I was more worried about medical issues that would come out. That was more my worry. More so my child wanting to find my donor. Yeah. A donor mother. Yeah.
That's an important element to it all as well, to have that medical history. It's one of my patients at the moment. She has just done a donor egg conception and has just had her baby, but right before so I think she was at 33 weeks, and she was contacted to say that she had a sperm donor. She used her eggs in a sperm donor, and she was contacted just around the 33-week point to say that the sperm donor's mother had just been found to have the BRCA gene for breast cancer, which now means that there's a high risk, obviously, for her daughter. And that was quite devastating for that to come out, at that point.
Pregnancy,
yeah. So it's the more medical history you can have, I think, obviously, the better. And tell me,
it is.
Sorry.
No, it is. Yeah, for sure.
Tell me, how does Nick feel about it all? Is he going along okay?
He's going along okay. He was actually, he wanted to go down this path way earlier than I did. I couldn't. It was weird. I told him about it, and I was open to it, and he wasn't at all. And then somewhere along the line, after all our fail cycles, he flipped, and I flipped the other way. I was like, no. And then he was. So we did this sort of 180 flip about how we felt about it. As we went through our own separate journeys.
That's really interesting, because what I find with a lot of the males is that they tend to be a little bit more reluctant usually. So when it's first raised, they're quite reluctant.
He was reluctant. Yeah. He didn't understand it. I had to explain in quite detail about what it meant, what it is, what it would look like. And he then flipped, and I flipped the other way.
It's so funny, because most of my women tell me that it's the males that are reluctant initially, but it takes quite a lot of convincing to get them over the line to sort of go, well, yeah, let's do this. Because I think for the males, there's this one element of, well, hang on, I married you, I want to have, or you're my partner, I want to have your baby. And then I think that's the first element. And the second element is, I think they can feel quite guilty that it will be genetically theirs, but not genetically yours. And so I think there's often some, I don't know, some guilt associated with that. Is it guilt?
No, I'll ask him.
Yeah.
No, I don't think he feels guilt.
Yeah.
Do you feel guilt?
Of course, he's stuck there with
that donor.
No.
About the donor process. He says no.
Good. That's good. It's always such a fascinating thing, though, when they just take that little bit of time to get there. And I know that's, for me, I was there very, very quickly after the 3 rounds of IVF that I did that were just debacles. So for me, the decision was very, very easy. And it just took a little bit for Jeff to kind of get there, which
I'll put it this way. Nick is a numbers man, so he just gave me statistics. Like with my egg, it was less than 2%. So he's like,
I told you you're going to drive a car with
I don't know whether you can hear that.
I can hear him talking. I can't hear what he's saying.
He's like, if I told you that, you would have a car accident, you've a 98% chance. My earpods keep falling out. Sorry. If you had a 98% chance of, having a car accident, would you go and drive a car? So it's like, we've got 98% chance of failure. Why are we keeping, why do we keep doing this?
It's interesting when you flip the statistics around the other way, because I was being quoted at my age at that point. I was being quoted 8% chance of success using my.
No, we've got 2%.
and when you flip it and go, well, that's a 98% and 92% chance of not conceiving. It's like, oh my goodness. Versus, it's 75%, 50 to 75% chance of the donor egg working.
So he's like, he just wants to flip the percentage statistics to our favor. So that was pretty much why he was so for it.
It's a good process to be going through. All right, so you're in a hotel room. What was that, darling?
I think I've lost you a little bit.
Oh, have you? Have you got me?
It says internet. Oh yeah, here we go. You're back. Yeah.
The wonders of technology between countries.
The internet has been playing up, and I can tell you now, Nick is very upset. Partly because it's a Formula One weekend, and it's a V8 supercar weekend, and he can't watch any of it because the Wi-Fi is terrible. He's sitting there like a little boy, being really sulky because he can't watch his V8s and Formula One.
Funny. Joe, tell me, how did you choose your donor? How many profiles did you wind up with?
I think we got sent, I want to say 15.
Wow. Okay.
Look, honestly, if I can tell you, if anyone wants Chinese Malaysian donors, go to the country, because there's tons. There's so many donors. And they're all, well, I'm not going to say they look like me. They don't look like me, but they've got, the features that I want. They're Malaysian, they're Chinese. Yeah, the other thing I sort of wanted was height, because I'm actually quite tall for an Asian. So that was kind of what I looked for. Height, pretty much height, not necessarily weight, but just, height and this sort of slim build that I have.
15 donors is quite a lot. When I first did mine in Thailand, and we obviously had Caucasian donors, but I was handed 52 profiles. I was like, oh my God. No,
see, then that's too much. I think that's just like, how you get a menu or wine menu. You're like, oh,
I know, it's like just too. Yeah, it's exactly like that. And so what we did was we printed off a set each of all the donor profiles and set them out on the table, and what we were told to do was
I've lost you a little bit there again.
Have you lost me?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, we were told to choose our top 5, right? So Jeff and I went through it and went, okay, you choose your 5, and we had a couple that were the same, but we still weren't convinced. And then we sort of sat on it for a while, and then they sent us another lot of donor profiles, and there was a new one on the list, and I just knew straight away. I kind of fell into her eyes. It was this thing of, oh my God, there she is. That's the one. She just jumped out at me. It was quite an interesting process. But I think a lot of the time women can get very attached to their donors. I'm very attached to some of the features of them. And sometimes it's like, you know what, just step back a little bit and just know that you're going to have a baby. I think that's
really... I didn't get attached. I was like, yeah, no, I didn't feel that attachment at all.
Well, that's nice though. That's really nice not to feel, you know, overly attached or I think that's a good thing, because then when we had to choose a second donor, in fact, we chose a second donor for Matilda, and that didn't work. And a third donor, and she was the one that we got Matilda from. But it's really interesting because when we did Matilda, we went to Malaysia as well, which I think you and I talked about. And we were in Penang rather than KL. Yeah, and used a different group from what you guys are using for our Caucasian donors. They have a lot of Chinese, Malaysian donors as well. It was just an interesting process to go through. And now I still have 6 embryos sitting there in Malaysia that I can't get. They're all stuck there.
I know. You have to come here, but I know you don't want to quarantine.
I know, I'm a bit nervous to quarantine. But, you know, maybe that's
well, it's not easy with just me and Nick. So I can't imagine with you, if you bring your 2 kids here, it'll be a nightmare.
I think if I did it, I'd go by myself, because ours are already as embryos. So it would be like, you know.
True. Yeah, true.
And do it myself. We did actually investigate whether we could get the donor to agree to us getting them transported back to the embryos transported back to Australia, just because of COVID and you know, all of the difficulties. But because she's an anonymous donor, she didn't want to agree to that. So that was like, okay, that's the end of that road. Then I'll have to go back to Malaysia. Was it traumatic getting over there?
Yes.
Yes. In a nutshell, yes. Yes.
I thought in a nutshell, how much time do we have? I packed. We were all ready to go. Got to the airport. I had all my documentations, what I thought I needed. And I just thought you could leave, but the Australian Border Force, they were all over the place. They were checking everyone's documentation. And the airlines, SQ, I don't blame them. They've got this Bible of, you know, every exemption for every country possible. So they were looking through mine. They couldn't find the particular one I had. So I'm standing for 10 minutes, just looking through it all, and just like, oh, here it is. I've never seen it before. And then, you know, they do read all the details required. And it seemed to them we didn't have one particular letter, which they'd never seen before as well. So, you know, they were sort of Googling what this DGI letter was. It was, you know, a letter from the Director General of Immigration. And we could see that he was CC'd on all our letters. But to them, they just thought they still needed this particular letter. And then they showed me a sample. I'm like, I've never seen it. No one's ever told me I needed it, blah, 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 blah. So we stood in check-in for 2 hours.
Wow.
We got there at 8:30, and Nick was like, why are we getting to the airport so early? There's no one flying. We'll be fine. 10:45, we're still not boarded for 11:30 flight.
Oh.
Yes, it was very traumatic. So anyway, they were talking to their counterparts in Malaysia, and they were WhatsApping, and so they were getting responses that were quite on the fence. So in the end, it was like, instruct the passengers to board, but let them know there's a 50-50 chance of them getting turned back. We can only check the validity of their approval once they get here. I'm like, why can't you check now?
Oh.
They're like, no, they have to board and get here. You know, and then the SQ staff, they were all like, they were rooting for us. They're like, you know, they were like, we've never had this response from the airline. It's always a hard no or a hard yes, because if you board and you get sent back, we get a big, huge fine. And then you have to quarantine back in Melbourne. So they never say yes unless they know for sure. But they've also never said, put them on and there's a 50-50 chance. So, you know, they were sure that we should board. Nick didn't want to board.
I was going to say,
I wanted to board.
Because he has a fear of flying anyway, I think, doesn't he? he's a bit anxious about it anyway.
Yeah.
So to go and that gets it back and then have to go again. Oh.
No, that was not a very good 2 hours sitting there on the floor.
Oh, it's just.
But anyway,
the last thing you need.
Yeah. So we made the call to board, and I was messaging my nurse and messaging a lady that actually worked at the Malaysian Health Tourist Council. I instantly met her on Facebook, and she had helped me a lot through our documentation and our paperwork. And this was 10:30 at night. I was messaging her, so it was 8:30 our time here. And both of them wrote back. Both of them, after the fact that we decided to board and checked in and was past the duty free, they both rang me and basically assured me that someone will be on the other side. We've got the right documents. Someone will be there to meet us, greet us, take us through immigration, and everything's okay. So to get that call before we boarded, that made all the difference to our flight and us actually enjoying the flight and sleeping.
You look like you were enjoying it.
We had to. We paid for that flight. I was going to enjoy it.
Oh, and then basically you got to the other end, and so they met you there, straight into the ambulance and straight to hospital quarantine.
The immigration took a bit. There was I was glad someone met us there, because there was like 6 checkpoints of the same similar question, and we had to download an app that's basically like a home surveillance app. It's a great app. I don't know why Australia doesn't have it. Don't know why we don't have it.
Well, Australia tends to get behind.
Yes, I know. So yeah, we had to download that app, which everyone in quarantine had to check in on. So you're sort of monitored. And then we went through those 5 or 6 checkpoints. Felt like the same questions, but I was glad she was there to to talk us all through them. And then I was like, oh, this is taking me a long time. I hope no one steals our luggage.
Because you had something like 100 kilos of luggage too, didn't you? You took all the food for your hospital quarantine just in case.
Yeah, I used up my 80 kilos of business class luggage allowed, yes, and plus carry on.
Wow.
But no one checked. No one. It was just sort of the full bags were sort of there when we got out, and we were taken to the ambulance. So there was no customs, but no one checks customs in Asia. You can bring in anything really.
Yeah. And so that's good, because I did actually wonder how you got all that food, because you wouldn't be able to do it the other way from Asia to Australia. But that's awesome, because I think, because you're still going through an IVF process, aren't you? You're still going through all of that. You still need good food, and you need to be nourished, and you need to be nurtured. And for you, who's missing out on exercise and the outdoors, at least you've got, some reasonable food.
And my avocados, they're going rotten, but I still have them.
I wondered how you got avocados there.
I brought 12.
Have you got any left? Or are they all done?
Yes. No. I've got like 7 or 6 left, I think. I'm rationing them now. But
fertility fruit from the gods, them. Good old avocado.
I'm rationing them, but like now I'm like, oh my God, I really got to eat them, because they're all going black and rotten.
Yeah, they would be starting now. They would be. Yeah. Now, the other thing, Joanna, that I wanted to talk to you about as well was, so we know that obviously when you're going through donor egg IVF, we don't have to worry about the quality of eggs. We don't have to be, focusing on that, as opposed to when you were doing IVF with number 1 fertility. Obviously, you were trying to focus on that egg quality. But now what we focus on and I'm talking about a supplemental nutritional sort of perspective, is we're focusing on your lining, your uterine lining, and circulation, because we still need that transfer to obviously stick. We want that little embryo to bury in there. So tell me, what nutrient regime or supplement regime do you have going at the moment? I know you're a queen of taking the supplements, but I think it's really important that women understand that even though we're using beautiful, young, whatever age, gorgeous quality donor eggs, we still need to be ready ourselves. Our bodies still need to be ready to accept that egg or that embryo. Mm-hmm. And to make sure that we've got a good uterine lining, good blood flow. So what's sort of your main kind of nutrient regime at the moment? What are you doing?
It's still actually quite similar to egg quality, because a lot of the egg quality ones are all antioxidants. So I've been taking them for years anyway. Even before IVF, I was, a supplement queen. People would say, you've got very expensive urine. And I'm like, I'd rather have expensive urine than not have them. So,
Some sort of insurance policy. Yeah.
You do what you do, I'll do what I do.
Exactly.
So it wasn't a big change for me just to add on more antioxidants. I haven't really dropped anything. I probably more concentrated now on vitamin E for lining.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. That's what I was looking at, sort of getting that really good quality vitamin E and coenzyme Q10.
Yeah, ubiquinol I take. So vitamin C, vitamin E, take NAC, glutathione, a good prenatal.
Explain to everyone why NAC, the N-acetylcysteine.
Basically mitochondria. Mitochondrial health.
So it's the mitochondrial energy with the coenzyme Q10. And also it really, really improves when you are doing a whole IVF process. It improves the responsiveness as well. So it's absolutely fantastic from that perspective. And you're on glutathione as well?
Yeah.
So beautiful liver.
Just a double whammy.
Yeah, why not? Why not? Because NAC turns into glutathione anyway.
Correct.
Anything else that you're taking? Anything else that you're focusing on?
Fish oil.
Yep.
Zinc.
Yep.
Selenium. What else? I think that's sort of it. I take a lot of probiotics, as you know.
Yes. And they're so important because, we used to think that the the uterus was quite sterile without much of a microbiome in there, but we now know that it has a very dynamic microbiome. And if you've got the wrong bugs, then you're creating this inflammatory immune response in your uterus that then makes it really, really hard for a little embryo to stick, no matter where the embryos come from, whether it's donor sperm, it doesn't matter. This is about implantation. So one of the most important things is making sure that uterus and that uterine microbiome are beautiful. So that's great.
Especially when I will be on antibiotics for a little bit. So I'm definitely upping up the vaginal ones for sure.
What's the current drug regime that you're doing at the moment for the donor process?
It will be, it's not it could be a HRT. I don't know what it's called really, but I downregulate it with a massive dose of decapeptyl, which most of you saw on my Instagram, which is horrific, the needle. And then it'll be Progenova, and I'll be on immune protocols because I wanted to be on those protocols, but unfortunately my natural killer cells are slightly elevated again. It actually was normal last year, but I had another biopsy earlier this year and it went up again. So I will be on immune protocols, which I've always been on. So we won't change that.
Yeah. And I think this is also, part of the really important conversation is, even though you're doing donor eggs, you still need to be looking after that entire environment, and you could still be doing exactly the same protocols that you were doing with IVF with your own eggs. And I don't think women realize that. I think they kind of go, oh cool, I've got donor eggs going on, we'll mix it with some sperm and make this beautiful embryo and in it'll go and it'll all be fine. It's like no, there's still a drug regime to do. There's a whole process to do.
There is a whole process, but I also would encourage ladies to advocate for themselves because they didn't give me an immune protocol. I asked, right? And I said, get these drugs. I'm going to get these drugs and I want these drugs. And they were happy with it. So,
And I agree. Advocate for yourselves. Be educated. Know what you're going in for. Don't just kind of fall into it. Like, know what's going on and know what your body's doing and push for it. It's really, really important because you are your own health advocate and you're the only one who knows your body the best.
Absolutely.
And you really want to be in that really good situation. One of the things that I found really different from when I was doing IVF in Australia, basically, when you have a transfer, you walk into the clinic, drop your pants, up goes the embryo, and you walk out again and go back to work, or you go and get on with your day. Whereas when I did it in Malaysia, they're very much we do the transfer. You actually admitted to hospital. You do the transfer. Then you are not allowed to move for 2 hours. They empty your bladder for you. Yeah, catheter goes in.
God, no.
They basically say, do not move for the next 2 hours, and they lie you stay on your hospital bed, and they tilt the hospital bed backwards a little bit so that you, for 2 hours on a tilt backwards, you can't move. And then they say for the next 24 hours, be a princess. Just don't do anything. Just go home, go back to for you to be back to your hospital room, legs up the wall, and just Netflix binge and don't do anything for the next 24 hours, which is so different from Australia. It's such a different
well,
they go through.
It is. Well, I think it's a cultural thing. Well, it's maybe probably a culture thing, because I mean, Asians do practice the confinement, after pregnancy.
Yeah.
So you don't move for 40 days. You don't shower for 40 days. So yeah.
It probably is a little bit of that. Yeah. I don't know that we'd be able to do it for 40 days though, Jo. Goodness me. Now, Jo, share with the audience where they can find you. You took your bliss balls with you, didn't you? Did you take
Sorry, I just lost you a bit there. I missed that question.
You took your bliss balls with you, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I love it. So share with the audience, share with my beautiful audience where people can find you, and be sure to jump on and grab some of Joanna's beautiful bliss balls, because they're fertility friendly and gorgeous. Anyone going through IVF or fertility, that would be a beautiful thing to have. But share with everyone where we can find you, Jo.
You can find me on at IVF_tribe, and the bliss balls are at Joanna's bliss balls. You won't get them until I get back. So.
No.
But they are delicious, and Nick can vouch for that, because thanks to him, I have a little side bliss ball business.
So good. I love it. I love that. Jo, thank you so much for spending, the last 45 minutes with us, and being so gracious in sharing your story. And thank you for continuing to share your story with everybody. It's such an empowering thing, and so helpful for women who just are trying to navigate this space. And I think your frankness and your openness and your just being you, like there's no smoke and mirrors. It's just, I think that's what's really appreciated by the wider community. So thank you. It's
my pleasure. It's absolutely my pleasure.
Absolutely.
If I can help one person, it was worth it.
That's exactly right. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Enjoy your last 7 days.
7 days.
Hospital quarantine. I'll be watching. Much love to you, Jo. Good luck, Nick.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.